Welcome, everyone. I'm Karen Henke from Findem, and we're here for a very exciting webinar today on AI and in the recruiting tech stack. So welcome to everyone who has joined today. I am the editor of the shortlist at Findem, and I'd like to thank Glider for helping us organize today, and to all of you for taking the time to be here. Our topic today is AI in the recruiting stack, the good and the bad. So I think we've got a lot of fun things, interesting things to talk about. And I'd first like to introduce you to our panelists. We'll start with introductions today and then have a few insights from talent leaders from our survey. Then we'll talk a bit about the rewards of using AI, some of the risks and how to mitigate those, as well as what we see as the new role for recruiters and measuring success. If you have questions, please enter those into the Q&A area, and we'll leave a little bit of time at the end to make sure that all of those are answered. Also, I'd like to let you know that this will be recorded and made available to you after the presentation. So with that, let's get started with who our panelists are today. So first, I'd like to welcome Phil Haynes. And Phil builds and inspires teams and engages high-performing teams in fast-paced, high-pressure, and ambiguous environments. He's led talent teams at Nubank, Zoom, Talent, NetSuite, and now at Amplitude. And I had the pleasure of actually onboarding with Phil at Talent a few years ago, right? Just a few.
Yeah.
He actually taught me how to interview people. So I'm forever grateful for Phil and thrilled to be here with him today.
Great to reconnect, Karen. I'm so happy to be here and talking about this subject. It's so topical.
Wonderful. And Phil, we did have a quick question for you. What was your most recent ChatGPT prompt that you used?
So my most recent one was I have a milestone birthday coming up this year, and I used ChatGPT to help me make a decision whether I go on an epic trip or whether I rent an RV and travel through the United States. And I wanted to see what it told me I should do, and it gave me some great advice. I won't tell you what I'm doing yet because I haven't made my decision, but I wanted AI to help me because I was confused as to what I should do.
Nice. I love that. Great. Well, we also have Satish Kumar from Glider, and Satish is the CEO and co-founder. He's a recognized thought leader in the recruiting and staffing industry space. He's a serial entrepreneur who also co-founded Edulastic, an edtech company. Satish is a strong proponent of skill-based hiring, and through Glider AI, he's designed recruiting programs for hundreds of enterprise and staffing firms. And I just had the pleasure of meeting Satish in the last weeks to prep for this interview, but I'm really happy that you're able to join us and that Glider has been such a terrific partner.
Thank you very much, Karen, for having me. Excited to be here.
Great. And Satish, are you using ChatGPT? And what would be your latest prompt?
Absolutely. So, last time I used ChatGPT was for my son who is in middle school. And as a parent, most can relate to such a situation. You're in the middle of the, pretty much around 9 p.m. in the evening, working on some last mile projects. And my son shows up at 9 p.m. asking, hey, I need you to prepare me for interview for my science project for the county fair. Somehow they get their memory back before the sleep time, right? So I just asked the ChatGPT prompt, treat me as a public school science teacher participating as a judge. And, I have been asked to evaluate science projects for topic ABC. What should I ask the students? Well, I got a list of 20 questions. I pasted in the document to my son and I started working on it. So that was my moment on parenting made easy by ChatGPT, right? The funny part is that now he does not bother asking such questions. He feels empowered to doing it directly with the ChatGPT.
A teachable moment and a homework helper. I love it.
Absolutely. But I also got a lesson that it gave me a clue how candidates can prepare for interview as a candidate using ChatGPT. So
Yeah, a professional insight as well.
yeah.
Great. Well, our third panelist I know well, Hari Kolam is the CEO and co-founder of Findem. He's an AI expert, serial entrepreneur, and accomplished technologist with decades of experience building companies and creating trailblazing technology solutions. So previous to co-founding Findem, he was a co-founder and CTO of Instart. It's been a pleasure for the last 2 years. I've been working with Hari and helping to build out Findem, and it's a really exciting place to be. So welcome, Hari.
Thank you, Karen. And it's such a pertinent topic, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with two of my favorite people, Satish and Phil. So excited.
Wonderful. And we're going to put you on the spot. Hopefully you're using ChatGPT as well. And what is your last prompt that you used?
Oh, I've been traveling internationally for the past 1 week, so there's no dearth of information right now in my mails and Slack. So my favorite prompt is summarize, right? I mean, give me the gist. So, and I use that more often than not, multiple times a day. It's a very, very handy tool to succinct and get a gist of things.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a super helpful one to get to the point. I'll just share my latest prompt. It was business related. And because I'm working with so many talent leaders, I want to understand them better. And I actually asked ChatGPT to create a persona for me for a VP of talent. So I must confess, that's how I'm doing my research.
I'd be curious to see what it said, see if I fit.
Right. I don't know, Phil. You're kind of an outlier.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'd like to kick off our conversation with a few data points that we got from our survey. We did a survey last November of talent leaders, and it's part of the State of Hiring and Recruiting report. What we found was when we asked talent leaders, are you using AI in the recruiting process? 4 out of 5 said yes, which was very interesting to us. And of course, that was before ChatGPT and 100 million people started using ChatGPT. So I think what we can conclude is that AI is here in some form or another in the recruiting stack. But I think we can also agree that people are a bit confused about what it is, what it does, and how to use it. The other question that we asked was, do you agree that there should be regulations on when and how AI is used in recruiting? And 83% agreed with that statement. And it went even higher, the higher, more responsibility you had in the role. So we also are seeing that talent leaders are really looking for guidance around, what is the right way to use this, and making sure that there are some areas for compliance. I'll share one other stat and then we'll get right into the conversation. I think the other point that we're hearing is that AI is really confusing to people. So when we ask, does AI decrease or increase bias, the audience was pretty split. 43% said it decreases bias in the recruiting process, and 42% believe AI increases bias. And what's interesting, and we might cover in this conversation, is that probably the answer is yes to both of them, that it all probably depends a bit on how you use it. So I think we have a lot to uncover, and I'm eager to get into the conversation. And so let's start off by looking at the recruiting funnel and just putting this out as a reminder of, how we bring someone into our organizations and the different steps and stages that they go through. And we'd like to start out with a question for the speakers on, where do you really see the disruption occurring in the recruiting funnel with AI? And Hari, since you're with Findem and Findem's at the top of the stack, why don't we start with you?
Thank you, Karen. So AI disruption on the top of the funnel essentially will yield better automation, right? I mean, in fact, anything that could be automated will be automated in this era of AI-first transformations. It's actually quite brilliant because it actually will help force the human efforts on areas which cannot and should not be automated, right? While the real disruption here is the ability for AI to analyze reams of data and synthesize unparalleled insights, right? I mean, that is the benefit of having AI sit on top of data, which previously was being done manually. Like if you look at the top of funnel activities, they largely are data intensive and they fall into essentially three goals. I mean, you talk about quality, you talk about diversity, you talk about speed. So you're essentially building a pipeline. Now, building a high quality pipeline, I mean, requires a robust understanding of what good really looks like, which means aligning the ideal candidate profile spec with the hiring manager. That requires intensive data research today, like understanding the market, understanding the talent pool, like past hires, right? I mean, analyzing the competition on where the hires are being made. So there's a lot of data work that goes into really ensuring that the quality is on a higher bar. Now, a good spec is no good if it is not inclusive. Now, if the expectation is to build an inclusive pipeline, then ensuring that the search is inclusive, again, is intensive data work, right? Notice that the ideal spec that you come up with is not directly searchable. It usually refers to some sort of an ideal career of a candidate, not a simple snapshot. So it's essentially a 3D information. You're looking at person and company and time, right? But the available candidate data today is in a resume, which is a one-dimensional data. So the list building exercise, which is the third part of a top of funnel exercise, is a manual task because a recruiter will convert this one-dimensional resume into a three-dimensional career of an individual and then match them to spec, right? I mean, and they do that for every candidate, and very, very laborious, right? I mean, on top of it, an ideal candidate could be anywhere in the ecosystem. They could be in one of your applicant or your past applicant. They could essentially be one of the referrers, possibly an alumni, right? So they could be anywhere. So which means it becomes a data intensive exercise to even hunt them down. Net here, the successful top of funnel activity involves large scale data analysis, which is done extremely manually today. Now, this is exactly where AI will come in handy and it's ripe for disruption. So vertical AI apps will automate substantial chunk of this data work, and good chunk of it is already happening in the ecosystem today.
Great. Yeah, so that top of the funnel where there's so much data and so much information to sift through, and that there's a real opportunity there for automation and the right kind of being able to pull out the information in a faster and easier way. And Satish, Glider is really working at the middle of the funnel. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about where you see AI having an impact there.
Sure. So to provide the context for why this question is relevant, especially for me, Glider provides a skill intelligence platform that enables companies hire quality talent, right? In fact, our mission is to make hiring fair and opportunity accessible. So this falls into the category of a screen and interview segment on the funnel that you showed just earlier, right? After the candidate has been identified or sourced and possibly engaged. So this question about how AI can help in the middle of the recruitment funnel is right up our alley. So let's talk about a screen first, right? There could be different modalities and depth of evaluation. So when you talk about the screening, this is heavily manual process today. People pick up the phone and start talking to the candidate, and after spending some time, they realize that maybe it's fit or not a fit. The whole light screening, where the purpose is to understand the interest and intent and some basic skill and capability evaluation. It's sort of a litmus test to dig deeper later. That can be completely automated through AI. We can have job description and candidate profile through AI and feed through the AI, and they can generate a set of hyper-personalized and relevant question to the candidate. Now, as a hiring manager or as a recruiter, I can ask those questions which are hyper-personalized to the candidate, or such personalized interactions can be delivered to candidates through WhatsApp, SMS, or email, through a chatbot kind of engagement. So that's one of light screening. The second component I will talk about is screening, that deep skill and capability assessment, right? And this is the flagship of what Glider solution does. Imagine a company can simulate a day at the job where real world tasks are presented to the candidate for all type of job roles like technology or non-tech, and anybody who can complete those tasks, right, should be given an opportunity irrespective of race, gender, ethnicity, college degree, etc. Now, they are the tests designed and calibrated to meet the quality benchmark for the organization. How AI is used here in this segment of the screen is really to provide a secure and a safe environment to candidates to take remote assessment. Through sophisticated AI-based proctoring, bad actors are flagged for plagiarism, impersonation, seeking additional help. And it really provides an explicit and auditable markers to identify candidate fraud, which in turn gives a high confidence to hiring manager on assessment result, right? And when it comes to technology job, today AI is already being used by developers to auto-generate code snippet, right? And that is the work future going to be for such candidates. So why don't we allow candidates to really use such assistant during the assessment process as well? That's what they're going to do anyway after joining the company. I do believe, however, that there is a place in the assessment process where ChatGPT or AI should not be used, because it is not a replacement for candidates' critical thinking and innovative approaches to problem solving. That is still we need, right? All these AI and ChatGPT should be used to bring the productivity for the candidates or for the employee as well. And last, I'll call out, there are automated video interview solutions for the screening part, right? Where AI is used to auto-generate a series of video, to auto-grade a series of video responses after auto-transcription against a specific rubric. And that's important because that provides a guardrail about how this response should be auto-evaluated. And some of the examples could be correctness, comprehensiveness, organizational thought, and on top, maybe auto-summarization of the whole video recording will be a great help to the hiring manager or recruitment team to get quickly to the main bullet points, right? So we talked about a screening, and the next part is interview. For the interview, during an interview in the remote hiring world, AI is used to ensure the identity of the person, to avoiding an impersonation and lip syncing. And I don't know how much you guys are aware, in the remote hiring world, it had gone crazy. And so AI is used to call out those bad actors, but more importantly, AI can also be used to, again, to create the code generator for technology roles, to auto-transcribe, auto-summarize, but also for the interviewer, it can be used to generate hyper-personalized questions. So as you notice in the both screening and interview, there is a place for AI to help both candidates and interviewer and be more efficient and data-driven.
Great, thank you, Satish. I'm definitely hearing a few themes coming through from Hari and Satish around the ability to improve quality and quality of experience for both the recruiters and the candidates. And I'm also hearing something about scale, where we're able to look at a larger pool, able to assess a larger pool of candidates. And in some ways that helps us uncover people who maybe wouldn't have been found otherwise, or wouldn't have, their skills would not have come to the fore because the recruiting process just didn't allow the scale to find those folks. So those are a couple of things I'm hearing, but I'd like to turn it over to Phil to kind of give us a broad view from that TA leader's perspective.
Yeah, you bet. I always take notes. So anytime Satish and Hari are talking, I'm thinking and I'm talking, and they spark a lot of of thoughts. So from the inside looking out from a TA leadership perspective, I think there are a couple of things here. It's automating or is it augmenting? And what I heard a little bit from Hari was that I love the idea of automating that should be automated and not automating the stuff that should remain in the human realm. I also love what Satish said about augmenting in an interview, et cetera, and making the human interaction better and more personalized. So I think these are the future of AI in the recruiting tech stack. I believe that we've already gone through a time where we tried to, quote, automate or outsource some of the TA functions, because in the early 2000s, we split sourcing and recruiting. And we created this whole job classification of people called sourcers. And we took that portion of the job. If you look at that whole funnel, and you think about one person managing that entire funnel for potentially 200 candidates at a time, that's too much for a human to handle. And that's why, there's been a lot of distrust around the human element in recruiting, because we do drop balls. We're humans. We do, drop candidates, unfortunately, because we're humans. And I think where we can use AI to automate that should be automated and augment that should be augmented, that's where it's really going to provide value. And that's where I think the future looking TA leader is seeing the opportunity here. The top of the funnel, I believe, is automated and should be automated, because I do believe that, not necessarily algorithmically, but that we can see a 360-degree view of a candidate by pulling in multiple data sources and actually looking at someone not through just the lens of a LinkedIn profile or not just through the lens of a resume. And I think what Hari said is really critical, is that you take that and now we have to transcribe that single flat document to some kind of fit to a multi-dimensional document, culture fit, culture add, growth potential, all those things. So I think automating the top of the funnel and removing that could be automated and driving that human value deeper into the value chain of really advising. And we've talked a lot in TA about becoming talent advisors, but it's really hard to become a talent advisor when you're shape shifting all the time from sourcing to actually advising hiring managers. So if we can automate the top of the funnel and augment the ability to consult and advise the business on making the highest quality outcome hiring we can, I think that's where the value really becomes in the funnel, is it drives the human element into the more strategic advisory roles. I'm excited about that.
I think that's great, Phil, to kind of wrap that up and give us that perspective of, we see changes really happening. We do see this transformation. We've seen a digital transformation in other parts of the organization. And so we think, we're all seeing that can come to HR as well, and recruiting. And we also, I think the AI gives us this nice leap forward. So we've talked a bit about the rewards and the opportunities here. So I think what we might want to do now is address the risks, because we are talking about machines and we are talking about people. HR and recruiting is about convincing someone to change their lives by coming to work for your company. And so we can't get away from that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the risks of using AI and how to mitigate those. And I think, Satish, why don't we start with you? You had a great response there about both how it helps the candidates and the employers. And maybe you can talk a little bit about where you see bias coming in and how you see AI, how to mitigate that bias.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. So while we are talking about biases in the AI and putting rail guards, maybe, let me first just say that all of us humans have unconscious biases. In general, we are quick to make judgment about others based on superficial factors, on identity, or based on identity of a person. So, and this subtle bias is usually worse than brazen discrimination because we cannot see it. At least in the AI system, we have a data-driven mechanism to detect and fix it. So I want you to be aware of the alternative we have here, that is us. And it is not just me saying this. The current state of affairs reflects it pretty well. Look at the representation of women and minority in the workforce. No wonder there need to be a big push for D&I for the organizations. So how do we design a recruitment funnel that is more inclusive and objective by a design to remove the biases? And our approach has been to qualify candidates in an unbiased manner by really relying on the skill-based hiring methodology, where every candidate goes through the same level of quality bar with a real-world task that is calibrated for the organizations. Now, it can be a blind evaluation as well, right? Only for the proctoring part, we use AI where, to avoid candidate fraud. But the bigger thing that you're bringing right now is that how the biases creeps in. So let's talk bad about AI now. I mean, just being cautious about using AI. I'm going to talk about a few points and then others can add to that as well. One of the bigger problems that I see being the large set of data I use to train is the missing contextual understanding, right? AI may struggle to fully grasp the context of a candidate achievements or maybe the career journey. It may undermine subtle details or fail to understand the significance of certain achievement, and it can lead to either incomplete or inaccurate evaluation. So that was one. Candidate experience and the personal touch that Phil also pointed out, AI system will lack those personal touch and human connection, and we need to really interpret human touches in the process to bring the balance between efficiency and the personalization. And the third I will talk about is adaptability to changing requirements, right? So AI algorithms are typically trained on historical data and patterns. It may not easily adapt to a candidate situation that has not occurred in the past in the pattern, or maybe the changing job requirement for emerging in a specialized positions. And all these can actually contribute to inherent bias in the outcome, right? Mm-hmm. This is all happening behind the scenes. So if we do not pay attention to this part, this is going to be appearing in the outcome as well. So I think we need to best of both. There has to be monitoring on the outcome which is being generated, and that is where the law and regulations coming out as well. But the bigger point I was trying to make here is that us humans are not better or worse than AI having bias in the system.
Right. I think that consistency and also that caution about the adaptability is really important. And also to put this in the contextualization. Hari, as a data expert, maybe you can talk a little bit about that. How should TA leaders be looking at technology and data in order to mitigate those risks?
Yeah, I mean, before we talk about the risk, it's super important to understand the real step function change that has happened in the last 2 quarters, right? Post ChatGPT. Now, what's really solved that large language models have demonstrated is the ability to generalize and summarize and synthesize information, right? It has not solved search. Now, and that's super important to essentially understand on what is solved and what is not. So using Gen AI as a search interface is probably always going to be quite limiting. Keep in mind that generative AI as a paradigm is also a data leveler, which means it is going to augment missing data in a very transparent way, in a way where you believe that it's giving the right answer, but most likely it possibly is extrapolating because it lacks context to what Satish pointed out, right? Now, while this could be useful in some cases, like if I'm generating an email content, I may essentially be able to extrapolate a little bit to make the email content compelling, but it does pose a major risk while you're leveraging it for recruiting and searching, right? Where we are really making real people decisions. So AI is only as good as the data it is trained on. The robust data here is the supreme key, right? Now, when you think about AI in context of recruiting, a resume as a snapshot of a candidate is possibly a very, very thin little amount of information, extrapolating that based on non-existent data is a big risk. So to solve and to apply AI in the context of recruiting, the first thing that needs to be solved is the problem of data. So when we talked about a one-dimensional data into a three-dimensional data, the essence of that is you need to essentially ensure that all available data needed to search the entire career of an individual is centralized. Now, until you solve that, applying and extrapolating, there's always a risk around augmenting it in the wrong way, right? I mean, the system augmenting it in the wrong way. So any vertical AI solution, which I think is something that we are extremely cognizant on, need to differentiate by providing a very robust data overlay, right? The other design paradigm, which I think is already starting to evolve, and that needs to be incorporated in any application leveraging AI, is to ensure that there is enough human oversight, right? So ultimately, all of these people decisions have major ramifications. So it should be an enabler for making better decisions and cannot be a substitute for making decisions, right? And of course, as the regulations and other things have started to flow in, a regular AI audit is also extremely important to ensure that we mitigate and at least be watchful of the risks.
Thank you, Hari. I think that data, what's happening kind of behind the prompt, ChatGPT is so reassuring and authoritative in its responses. And so it's so important for us to be really thinking about what is the information going into that prompt. So Phil, how do you address this as a talent leader? What are you looking for in terms of talking about the risk, concerns about the risk, addressing those?
I think it's, for me, we are never going, so the survey data that you said, where 43% feel like it's less biased and 42% feel like it's more biased, I think that's the issue, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a human input and the human is biased. So I don't think that as D&I practitioners, we can never abandon the idea of we're mitigating bias in the process humanly, whether it's our advisement of our hiring managers on decisions that they're making around hiring or the input that we're putting into ChatGPT. If we're doing it from a biased perspective, we're going to naturally increase the bias of the AI. And I think that that's really the fundamental thing that I have to add to what's already been said by Satish and Hari, is just that we as practitioners cannot abandon the pounding of the drum to mitigate our own human bias, because there's even a great question in the Q&A someone asked about, hey, if it's just learning from past successful candidates, aren't you just continuing to to propagate the bias that's in your system? And absolutely the answer is yes. I mean, if we're not actively as humans removing that bias and checking ourselves, I think today, especially in its infancy, we have the ability to actually trash it because we're giving it bad biased prompts. We're giving it bad biased instruction. So I think that the only thing I would add is that, the message here is that AI isn't going to remove the responsibility from the human to check your own bias and really understand what you're bringing to the table. I think people will have to kind of up-level their awareness, so I think what I'm hearing is that in a way, this is such a great opportunity for people to get out of the kind of menial work that they're doing and really connect with people, think about what their organization really needs, what their teams really need. And so it's kind of an exciting time in a way to be a recruiter, right? So maybe we talk a little bit about how that recruiter role changes to take advantage of these opportunities while mitigating the risks that we've identified. So Phil, I see you nodding your head, and I think for you. I have probably presented on this subject internally here at Amplitude a dozen times. And I really do think, I made a comment on a post for this webinar about the fact that this is really a huge disruption. Like, I remember the disruption of the job board, right? The disruption of the job board in 1995 when CareerBuilder launched was like, oh my God, I can actually advertise my jobs everywhere in the world. Like, this is amazing. And then LinkedIn came around. Oh, look at this database. Like, there have been disruptions to what we've done. But it has always been on the premise that our value as TA people is based on finding the candidate. And I believe that AI is now going to remove that as the value proposition, primary value proposition of TA. I believe that finding the candidate is going to be a given. I believe that it's going to be, how do you engage them? So if you go down the funnel, how do you engage them? How do you communicate with them? How do you screen and assess them? How do you make quality hiring outcomes? That's where the recruiter, and again, we've talked around it a little bit with the concept of like, let's automate the stuff that can be automated, but let's augment the stuff that is more human based. And I think the value proposition of a TA, a recruiter, of a recruiting coordinator, of a sourcer, of a TA leader is going to be more on the quality outcome of the process than it is on, I found this candidate, hooray, because I found this candidate is not the problem that we were trying to solve in the 90s. It was not the problem that we were trying to solve. I mean, finding the candidate was the problem we were trying to solve. So starting recruiting before the internet, like I did, finding a candidate using yellow pages and a phone and a pager, finding a candidate was the hardest thing in the world. And that's where recruiting kind of got its birth, was we were better at finding candidates than hiring managers. We had a Rolodex and we could find people. We just augmented that and automated that through the years. And now I think that that's, with AI, going to be so automated and so reliable that our value is going to have to move up the value chain, and we're going to have to become more strategic in our approach. And I think that that's a great thing for recruiting.
I think that's a very bright future. It's exciting. It is going, and I know that there's been a lot of transitions in this last quarter or two, a lot of recruiters kind of looking for new opportunities. And so it's a great time to really think about what skills and what you can bring to the job and how it will be different. Satish, I know you've been thinking about this also in terms of the change management that has to happen within the organization. And so to help people get to this new level of role, how does an organization make that happen?
Sure. Actually, I love what Phil just said, that recruiters have to move up in the value chain, right? Everything that can be automated should be. So on that note, the skill and capability evaluation can be automated through glider-like solution, whereas recruiters should more focus on human engagement and cultural fitment. In fact, I'll go a step further, saying that beyond being the talent advisor to the hiring team, they should also become a career advisor to the candidates, right? And as AI takes care of all the mundane tasks, maybe recruiter will pay more attention to people with the special needs, take care of their accommodations, provide them opportunity to make a more equitable society. In fact, we saw a surge in the pandemic world where remote workforce was common, and then people with disabilities started getting a lot more opportunities. What if we make it a normal practice, because now recruitment team can focus more focus on the value-add services. As a part of change management, it really goes back to, as Phil said, where the focus should be. Not finding candidates. Candidates are there, engaging with them. So the whole interview design process need to be put in place and to redraw that, what it looks like. But it will also require, I would say, massive training of the recruitment workforce, because the role has completely changed now, right? And some of the areas where, I would seek Phil's feedback on that as well. Some of the areas where I believe it requires massive training on would be technical proficiency and data literacy, right? Now they need to be aware of the technology algorithm, what parameter to tweak, and need to be able to collect, analyze the data to make strategic decisions. That's number one. then they need to focus on relationship building. I know a lot of recruiters have been doing it already to some degree, but if that becomes the focus, building relationship, then they need to build rapport with candidates, demonstrate empathy, and effectively be able to communicate the proposition of the organization. And this is the core of the training that need to go through. Phil mentioned diversity and inclusion expertise, right? They need to be aware of that. If the model is not resulting in the decisions that are more diverse and inclusive, they need to be able to go back and look at and incorporate in their practices. So all these considerations is expected of the recruitment team now. And I forgot one thing, the ethical consideration as well, right? They need to understand the fairness of privacy concern in AI, and all these require them to undergo a right sort of training, and then they can move up the value chain as well. So that would be my take on the change management that in the AI based recruiting operations.
Great. And thank you, Satish. I think that it is a big challenge. This is not going to be an easy transition. And I think it's important for organizations to start thinking about these considerations and planning for them. It's going to be a big shift. Hari, I know at Findem we've been talking a lot about really opening up the channels that recruiters are using to search for people. And I'm wondering if you have some thoughts about this changing role of the recruiter as well. I believe you're muted, Hari.
Yeah, what was discussed so far, which is recruiters essentially as network builders, is so very true today as well as in the post-AI era, right? I mean, they should be doing that, right? I mean, the IQ part of the recruiting cycle is going to benefit a lot because of automation, right? I mean, and it's going to unlock time for recruiters to build relationships. Now, the automation is on many fronts, right? I mean, the applications and the effort that we're building at Findem on connecting the dots across multiple channels from where candidates could be found is something that is going to unlock quite a bit of time for the recruiters to focus a whole lot more on relationship building. The role will essentially evolve into a lot more strategic to become a strong partner for the business, like Phil mentions. The focus will evolve from activity, which is input, to driving quality outcomes, which is output. Now, one other way, which I think is very subtle, which recruiters are going to gain a whole lot because of gaining access to the right data insight, is when they are on a call with the candidate, the effective way of selling the candidate. How do you present the opportunity? How do you talk about what's in it for the candidate to pursue this opportunity? Talk about the career trajectories of similar people who joined the company, on how successful they were. Data is going to come in very, very handy. In today's world, most of it is empirically being done in a very subjective way through a recruiter. By providing the right data in a very, very handy way, it's going to massively influence on how they engage with the candidates as well. So it's a bright future because the job of EQ essentially is also going to be benefiting quite a lot because of access to data.
Absolutely. Before we move to our Q&A, and we do have a few questions there that I want to make sure we get to, but I would like to do one last round on the next steps for the recruiter, and that is measuring success. So I think what you're talking about, what all of you have talked about, is this changing the level of quality, the scale, the tasks, or the value that the recruiters are bringing. So how does this change how we measure what the TA organization does for the business and the individuals? So Phil, why don't we start with you, and then I'll just go to each of you really quickly without a wrap up so that we can move on to our QA. Phil?
Yeah, fantastic. So I've been, Karen, I don't know if I was supposed to be doing this, but I've been answering some of the questions in the Q&A. But one of the questions was around the quality of hire. And so the quality of hire has been this ethereal thing in talent acquisition for the 30 plus years I've been doing this, where why is a recruiter going to be held to a quality outcome when we don't make the decision? Right? That was always that. And I mean, I remember like people banging the drum in TA, like we can't be held to quality of hire because we can only present a good quality slate of candidates. And if the hiring manager screws it up, then okay, well, then, you know, we had no control over that. I believe that that outcome will be our primary value to the shareholders. And I believe it's actually an enhanced value. I believe by embracing quality of hire and embracing the metrics and the way that you want to measure quality of hire in your organization is then you can demonstrate the actual value that you're bringing to the organization. And again, this is the example I use internally here at Amplitude. If you say there are 1,000 high performing enterprise AEs in the San Francisco area. And I can say that we now have 300 of them at Amplitude. We have a third of the highest performing AEs available in the market today. I don't know how the board of directors or the shareholders or the executive leadership team wouldn't want to give me a raise. Right? Because this is going to change the fundamental trajectory of the company if I can demonstrate that we are creating a strategic advantage by the quality of the outcome that we are driving, not just the quality. And Hari said it again perfectly. It's not inputs, it's outputs. And if the output is now quantifiable in revenue, shareholder value, market value, TA is no longer just a gumball machine. You put a quarter in, you get a gumball out.
Wow. Hari or Satish? Hari, would you like to follow up?
Sure. I think we all agree that the focus will shift to the outcome and impact really the top line of the company. I want to be a little bit more specific about how can the purview of recruitment goes beyond the hiring matrix, right? Traditionally, we have tracked time to fill, cost per hire, applicant to hire ratio, etc. With this focus on outcome, some of the objective criteria that we can include could be time for candidate to become productive post-hire. When did they get promoted? When did they get the promotion post-hire? Impact on the retention rate. These are some of the things that reflect the quality of the hire, right? Post-hiring. So we can add those to the metrics and KPIs for recruitment team and be focused on that. That is the true impact on the company finances.
Fantastic. All right.
I would second that as well. I mean, the benefit of automation should essentially be better ROI. I mean, if TA is run as a business, then the P&L should reflect that, right? So, of course, quality, speed, and diversity should all essentially be reflective of these benefits. The key part here is ensuring that the dashboards and the analytics that essentially is used is essentially telling the overall ROI story, not part of the story, which means centralization of the context and building the narrative on top of it is essentially going to be the way future. The best part, AI can help even there, right? So throwing in a gap and then to contextualizing what this actually means, what is the narrative, what are the trends, it essentially give the right cues to present the story well before the business as well. Overall, the goal of leveling up the talent teams into strategic leaders is something that I think is going to happen post this disruption, because access to data is fast, access to analysis is fast. So the focus will be mostly on ensuring that the right business drivers essentially are prioritized.
Fantastic. I'm excited about what I'm hearing here, because what I see is that HR won't be this task-based function anymore. It really will be a value-based function. And I'm imagining the chief people officers sitting right alongside the other leaders of the company and having a major impact on the bottom line. So great feedback from everyone. I would like to go to our Q&A now. So the first question that we have is around algorithms. And I know this is a huge concern for folks, and looking at how do you optimize the algorithms to incorporate diversity considerations when they're trained on past data. And Satish, you did address this a bit in a comment you made earlier. And also if they're looking at scraping information that doesn't necessarily identify whether what someone's race, class, age is. I also see neurodiversity, I know, is an area coming up as well. And, you know, that's not a tag someone has or a thing that they look like. So how do we address that and make sure that algorithms are opening up the broadest pool? Hari, would you?
Go ahead, Hari.
Go for it, Satish. I can follow.
Okay, so what I'm going to say that one of the primary considerations of feeding the large set of data in the model is that they have the PII, personally identifiable information, have to be scraped off. Only then you're going to really set the bar that you need for the organization. Now, if you have biased data, more success for a specific ethnicity of people, and that is the success criteria that is applied to other group of people, that is not going to work. So the optimization for diversity would pretty much necessitate the data to be more objective of any such biases. And so that is one part. The second part, it has to be statistically significant data to make sense. So both the quality as well as the diversity and the amount of data, all three are relevant to have a right model fed in the right data fed in the model.
Yeah, I mean, we at Findem essentially have a strong point of view on this one. I mean, one of the reasons for diversity is we attribute quality to pedigree of an individual. Which company did they come from? Which school did they go to? Who did they associate with, right? The explicit set of patterns that define what quality looks like in the ecosystem today, and that has to change, right? Now, how will that change? The way you essentially change that is going 3 levels above and talk about people like people. Collection of attributes. I mean, the search meta cannot be very explicitly defined based on what is written down in a resume, but it has to be aligned with the business needs, which actually should be the way the interfacing needs to essentially happen. So by changing the mechanism of an input and then ensuring that that abstraction essentially becomes the starting point of a search, there is going to be the aspect of building an inclusive pipeline can actually really be automated through that.
I think this is a very important question. And I want to go to Phil to wrap this up for us, because and Satish brought this up in a in a post on LinkedIn around, you know, there's still a lot of human bias. And let's say the recruiter does an amazing job of building a very balanced talent pool and brings in people who are all top quality and diverse. And then the hiring manager still has their biases. So they're still looking at them and saying, well, you know, did you spend 10 years coding? Because if you haven't spent 10 years coding, then, you know, so how do you get beyond the hiring manager, that person who's making that final decision?
Gosh, that's the $64,000 question, Karen, right? So I think I was just answering one of the questions in the chat, because I've meant no disrespect. I have been practicing TA for over 30 years. I love this. It is my career. I believe that we do have a value proposition that we can enhance in TA. And I believe all of what we've talked about will enhance that. I think that the trust is the critical thing, because I think if a recruiter brings a truly objective opinion in a debrief session and there's trust there from the hiring manager, the hiring manager is making independent decisions outside of what TA is asking them to do, because the trust may not be there. The reliance on them may not be there to be these true advisors. So I think in those situations, you know, again, we have a series of questions, and we need to be investigators, and we need to be our own ChatGPT by producing outcomes that make hiring managers think differently about how they're making these decisions. But that's a really critical one, which is do you really need 10 years, right? And the only way that I've found successfully and repeatably to do that is to look at their current teams, because oftentimes they're holding a new hire to a different standard than some of the people on their current teams. And I've actually done this. I'm happy to share with somebody offline an experiment I did when I was at NetSuite that still today has people talking about it, because I blinded resumes of people on a hiring manager's team and said, would you hire this person? And they're like, no, they don't have this, they don't have that. I'm like, yeah, this person works for you in New York City. So let's take that one out of the way. So I think we have to be able to shine a light on some of the decisions and some of the thinking behind the decisions, especially when it comes to opening the parameters and really understanding that the core competency of the person in front of you, regardless of their diversity makeup, is the right core competency that you need in the job.
Great. Yeah, these are big challenges. And I think I see the comment now on the gumball in and out. And I do agree. I think what you were saying is also that, and what we're all saying is that it's a hard job. And what we're trying to do is use technology and data to give TA leaders more time to do what they do best, which is connecting with real people, making them feel welcome, making them feel like they belong, and then doing that navigation with the business as well, with that hiring manager who you also have to persuade in these ways. So it is a challenging, and I think the leaders I talk, or the recruiters I talk to, enjoy it. Like, this is what they love to do. I think also I do want to mention, I'm seeing in the chat too, ChatGPT is an interface over a lot of processes. So I want us to also make sure, I think we would be remiss as a team if we didn't recognize that ChatGPT is one way of accessing information, and that AI is at work in so many ways in our lives already, not just in this prompt that we see. So let's go to one. It seems like a lot of the AI applications are natural evolutions of processes that we already have, and we have talked about, like, this automation. But let's talk about that augmentation. So how is AI really going to disrupt and change and provide that augmentation place that's, once we get that automation out of the way, where is it really just going to change what we do? Let's see, who wants to take that one first? Is that Phil?
I think we should have Satish answer that. I mean, this is really Satish's wheelhouse, is in the assessment and the selection. And I think that the question is around how's it gonna disrupt the concept of the interview. And Satish, you mentioned a couple of things, and I'm happy to add my 2 cents, but I'd like to hear what Satish thinks.
Absolutely. So since the question was specifically about interview and augmenting the interview, and I think in my early example, I pointed out 2 explicit items. One could be that now with the AI-based system, we can generate hyper-personalized questions based on job requirement and the candidate profile, and really help guide interviewers to ask those questions, right? And then on the other side, one explicit example could be that as a part of evaluation process, we can present the options in terms of summary, in terms of assessing the responses, and on the candidate side, of course, allowing them to create the code that could be auto-generated for their work. So there are various elements of AI that can be purpose-fit to do the job and augment the whole interview process.
Yes, thank you, Satish. Great question, and a really powerful tool. It can really make a big difference in the way that we're connecting. So thank you for that. I do see that we're out of time. We ran out, having such a great discussion. We do have some questions left, and we will answer those offline for you. The recording will be available, and I'm going to quickly share my screen. Just as we wrap up, I would love to just go have each one of you just quickly share what is most exciting. I'm sharing the wrong screen. What is most exciting for you with AI, about the future of AI in recruiting? So Satish, let's go to you first.
Thank you. Sure. First, I want to acknowledge that recruiting is a noble profession, like teacher or doctors, right? That brings opportunity to candidates to succeed in the professional personal life. It means bringing happiness to the candidate with a meaningful profession. So I'm excited about AI in recruiting, where we are able to take care of automation of mundane tasks and add the value-added work. That recruiter can be the career advisor for candidates and talent advisor to the business unit. That's how I see the world evolving.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think you asked the question around what is exciting about AI in the recruiting stack. I would say that's, as a young startup, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to innovate in this space, right? So if you notice, I mean, ChatGPT has, the entire revolution has made AI accessible to the masses. I mean, right now there is the people out there that are touching and feeling it in real world and deriving value out of it, right? The expectation on how product will be built out in the future have changed post November 2022, right? And this for us, disrupting in this time and age, it's really easy to actually go and challenge the status quo and redefine, consolidate workflows and the boundaries of automation. So it is an exciting time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think just with both of those, I agree 100%. I think the excitement for me is just to find, we've each disruption in the recruiting world that I've been through has enhanced our standing in the world, to Satish's point around it's a noble profession. I don't think that we get the nods that we need to get at the board of directors level, at the shareholders level, because we do bring talent into the organization. And in the software world that I'm in, it's all people, right? We're not manufacturing widgets. So I think it's the most exciting thing for me is to finally push us into that value chain where we are going to be able to quantify the actual value, not just how fast are we hiring, how many people are we hiring, but what is that quality that we're hiring, and how are we changing the landscape of our companies. I'm excited about that.
Great. Well, thank you all for this wonderful discussion. I am going to, let's see. Thank you all. Thank you, Phil, Satish, Hari, and to our audience for all of your time and attention, to Glider for co-sponsoring this, and to Joseph Cole, who partnered with me and did a lot of the work behind the scenes here. So I just want to let you all know that if you have any questions or would like to follow up with either with us, I'm Karen at Findem.ai. Joseph is joseph.cole at glider.ai, and we're excited to continue this conversation in LinkedIn and other places. And thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Joseph. Satish, Hari, good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.